title of the session is Financing Water. What if national PDBs were the missing link? So we're going to have 4 speakers, and I'll introduce them just before they get started. What we're hoping to do is we'll have a few slides, but my real ambition for this entire session is to get to a question. So who here has been to more than 2 sessions so far? So everyone almost has been to more than 2 sessions, if we believe you, and you haven't just been shopping at the waterfront. And who has been in a session where the audience got to ask a question? 3 of you, 4, 5. Okay, so it's quite relatively rare occurrence. So we're going to try and repeat that amazing accomplishment of at least one other session got to ask a question, because it's been a little bit short on participant engagement. So we hope to correct that today, and I do that partly to entice you to stay to the end, and partly to put pressure on our speakers to keep to their time so that we have time for the questions at the end. But, so we're going to have, as I said, 4 speakers. We're going to have a welcome from AFD, then we're going to hear from some research that's been done on this subject around the link between water and PDBs, and then we're going to hear 2 specific regional cases, one from Vietnam and one from here in Southern Africa. But again, I'll introduce those speakers when we get to it. But if I can start with Hélène Duffelkit from Agence Française de Développement, who will welcome us and give us a bit of context.
So, do you hear me properly? Yeah, I guess so. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm not your recurrent speaker because my team in the water in Paris was not able to make it. I greet them and I thank you for organizing together with the OECD. So as has been said, water issues are high on the agenda, but it is the only session this morning, so I'm very happy it takes place and gather the coalition given all the challenges around the water. We all know that water is under pressure. 1/4 of the population in the world don't access drinkable water. Demographic pressure and climate change will put pressure again on water, and we know that we have a lot of disasters as well to be managed. Floods and drought will bring very heavy challenges. So against this background, it should be very high at the agenda, even though it's not really. And we know that it is really underinvested. The investment is subscaled. So what do we do when we know that it's subscaled at the public level, it's subscaled at the ODA level? The PDBs are only investing 50 billion, and it should be 3, 4, or 5-fold this amount to reach what we need for accessing water. So this coalition is very promising. It gathers a lot of public banks. What will be really important is to focus on national public banks, because we have a lot of MDBs, but the national public bank has a specific role to play. This is a bet we are doing, and I have to confess that this coalition is really as a model, because it has several parts in it, going from sharing knowledge and peer learning, which is really important, to research, and we will have a keynote of a researcher on this. Training and technical assistance are really important, and also advocacy, because we know that we have some meetings along the way, and the water should be also above the global health and the ocean issue. So we hope that we will have a momentum to that. And today is really to take stock on what happened during the past months, and to share your views and your experience on what have been provided by the coalition, and of course to take stock and to say what is working, what could be improved. It is a community of will, I guess. It has been said at the opening. It's really important, and also a community of practice. And so we are very happy at the EFD to co-chair this coalition. And I'm really eager to hearing you and having a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
that's the Water Finance Coalition, and if you Google Water Finance Coalition, you find out more about it. Don't do it now, obviously. We'll hear some slides about it first. But with that, can I introduce our first speaker, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the thinking that lies behind this, some of the actual issues that this coalition needs and can get into. It's Thomas Marois, who's from McMaster University in Ontario, Canada. And he also brought a book, which you can wave in the air now, Thomas, and may or may not feature as part of your presentation. So with that, over to you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you, Hélène. And thank you to my co-panelists for being here today. It's such an interesting and fascinating and really important topic. Will my slides be coming up? Well, we're waiting. There we go. We're waiting for that. Thank you for the plug about the book. Let me just say now that I have a few limited copies that are for free. I'm happy we're handing them out. I could only carry so many on the flight, so it was a bit difficult to bring as many, but the book is open access, and so you can download the chapters for free online as well. But we also have a one-page or two-page brief. So today I want to talk about the research that I've been doing, but I've been doing with some important colleagues, and I want to acknowledge and recognize the work of my co-authors and co-researchers, David MacDonald at Queen's University in Canada and Susan Spronk at the University of Ottawa in Canada. Next slide, please. We've been working on this topic of, I'm doing it, of public banks and public water for at least 4 or 5 years now. But my collaborators were really water researchers, and when we came together and began to talk about the topic, we realized that there's a very natural intersection between public banks and public water. And what we have tried to do in our research over the years is to match these two siloed research areas of public banks with public water operators. And much of that is then represented in the books I'll show you in a second, of trying to bring together these two important areas of sustainable development and sustainable finance. And what I want to share with you today is the notion that public-public collaborations work, and they work really well in water. And I can attest that I shared these slides, a while ago. But this notion of public-public collaborations is something that has been really prevalent in the Finance in Commons Summit this year, about the need for public banks to work together and to work together with public services. And I always begin with the argument that, and I think that's an accepted argument here, is that there is no pathway to financing the Sustainable Development Goals at the pace, scale, and on the terms needed for a just transition that will not pass through the world's public banks. We really need to know more about them. And this is nowhere more evident, I think, than in SDG 6, in terms of clean water and sanitation for all, not only for some. And the thesis that we come to through research is that in terms of advancing SDG 6, water for all, public-public collaboration is a real ideal, not perfect, let's say, but a very strong means of delivering on SDG 6. We have good reasons for this, which I'll share with you. We've presented these in the 2 books that we've done now on it. First one is on public banks and public water in Europe, which came out a couple of years ago, both as a special issue in the International Water Resources Association Journal, but also as a book then later on. And then this book we share with you today. Between the 2 studies that the 2 books that we've done, we've covered 18 case studies in both the global north and the global south. Some of the chapters, I guess, would have more than one bank in it. I'm not going to read them off, but you can see that there's a pretty decent selection of countries that are really covering pretty much every corner of the earth in one way or another. And these are really baseline research chapters. There's not a lot of dedicated research, and so we were just trying to set a foundation by which we can begin to have a new conversation, a bolder conversation around the ways in which public banks can collaborate with public water operators to deliver clean water for all. And I do want to acknowledge that we have had really excellent collaborations and support from the regional public banking associations, the European Association, the African Association, the Asian Association, and the Latin American Association, and we simply could not have done the research without them. The motivations for the work that we've done and have been working on and continue to work on is really, as many I'm sure in this room know, that there is a need for long-term investment, but at the same time there's insufficient government spending in water. And water and sanitation is what we can call lumpy investments. It's a bit of a funny term, but it's expensive, it's costly, not immediate or any sort of necessary direct return to the investment. So it's not something naturally falls within a market or within the logic of a bank per se. But also significant evidence that there's 97% is still public sector investment. It's not, it's very limited private sector investment, and in most cases the PPPs have really shown to be undesirable. So we're not looking at that, we're looking at public-public collaborations. At the same time, there's a general lack of research on public banks in its sector, little to no knowledge. We're starting to develop that in terms of the ties to public water, and we were just ourselves very curious about the potential of public-public collaborations. We thought, we need to look at this and see what's going on. And as I'd mentioned, so then we thought we need to connect these two otherwise siloed fields of research between banks and water. There are some cautionary tales. It's not a perfect story by any means. In general, we know that there are massive research or investment gaps in infrastructure. I'm not going to go through all of these, and certainly public banks are no silver bullets for this. They can't do it alone. They should not be expected to do it alone. The government has to step in with direct, non-repayable investment in water. And a range of other issues, but ones that really stuck out is with the public banks, there is a risk of debt trap, of increasing indebtedness of already indebted public water operators and community water operators. And often pressure on the banks to lend at market terms and to pitch public water in terms of bankability, which is very difficult when there's very few, if any, cases in the world of public water operators working on cost recovery, let alone a cost recovery plus. But there are also some promising findings. Public banks can lend patient, long-term, low-cost, and appropriate financing. In a number of the case studies, they could provide smaller credits to very small communities in ways that no other bank would consider it, domestic currency, and quite a number of really powerful examples of accountable and transparent, even democratic ownership and control between the banks and the public water operators. And an important lesson too was really the persistence of these public banks through political cycles. They, in many cases, one of the obvious examples is the Dutch Water Bank. They are experts in their field, but in some cases they were just experts at financing. So the public banks simply were delivering the financing needed to the water operators and doing it quickly, fastly, and quickly, and very low sort of administrative costs. So a whole range of promising findings, and we share those with you here and in the book. So I just want to sort of work towards summing this up. We argue for public-public collaborations. Are they the way forward? We argue yes, and that there's a strong role for MDBs to collaborate with the NDBs. There's a beautiful example, a number of examples actually, but a really lovely example in Fonplata in South America, of public collaboration between that regional bank, City of Buenos Aires, connecting to local communities, marginalized communities to do both job training and water access. Case of India is a collaboration of NABARD with 18 public commercial banks to deliver a massive regional water infrastructure. Really fascinating examples in the book. The banks can also provide local expertise. They lend on a policy mandate, quite often rather than a profit mandate. And this is really what we need in terms of delivering the financing needed to advance on the SDG 6. I end with the caution, there is nothing inherently good or bad about public banks. As I always argue, they're only as good as we command them or make them to be. So they're very much dynamic institutions, and so we have to be cautious. There are lessons, important ones, cautions, huge potential, but we always need to expose them to accountable and transparent questions. So for me, really, public banks are not the only answers. Obviously, for direct government spending, there's a huge need for that. But in terms of the future of public water, it really is, in many cases, in the hands of public banks. And this is a message that is coming through in the UN Finance for Development conference that we're leading up to in Sevilla this summer. And they write in the Zero draft that came out last month, a couple months ago, I guess now, as in the words of the member states of this Zero draft, as shareholders of the multilateral development banks and other public development banks, we will enhance their ability to work better as a system in service of country-led development strategies. And water and the delivery of water and water for all is one of the most significant national development strategies and important ones that if we want just transitions, we really must deliver on. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to the rest of our contributions from our panelists. Thank you.
One was the excellent content and the insights Thomas shared with us, and the other was for not just keeping to time, but saving us a minute. So for those of you who've arrived more recently, the ambition of this session is partly to share insights on public development banks, their potential role in the water sector. Another ambition is to enable you in the audience to ask some questions. So now that the room is filling up, I'm also going to introduce everyone more formally, which I didn't do earlier. Are there any ministers in the room? No? Excellent. I don't have to wear my tie then. I'll just leave that with you. I think that color goes better on Hélène than it does for me, so that's good. But this is the bit where we get to discover who gets to ask the questions, because we will have limited time. So who knows Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the story of the golden ticket? Come on. The golden ticket that I see some of you looking a bit shy. If you reach down to your chair leg on the right side, do you have not a golden ticket, but a red ticket attached to it? I know some of you do, so don't be shy. Who's got some golden tickets? Anyone? Just on the one, two. There's definitely one over there, and there's definitely one over there. If you look a little harder, you'll find them. But okay. So what I want you guys with the golden tickets to do is think carefully about what your question is going to be. And your question can either be to Hélène Joufelkit, who started us off by talking about this alliance that's come together, the waterfinancecoalition.org, which we'll put on the screen later. She's the Deputy Executive Director of Sustainable Development Solutions from AFD, and thank you for coming all this way. We've just heard from Thomas Marois, who is at McMaster University, as he said. He's the Canada Research Chair in Public Banks and the Director of the Public Banking Project. Now, before we get to those exciting questions, and do keep looking for those golden tickets, although they are in fact red, we're going to hear from two specific case studies. So the first we're going to hear from is Vietnam. Am I correct? Yes? And we're going to hear from Chung, who is the director of the Foreign Loan Department at the Vietnam Development Bank. His name is longer than that, but he encouraged me to just use the short version, I think to save me from mispronouncing Vietnamese, but he can explain. And after that, we're going to have Johan Lubbe, who is here in South Africa and is head of the Water Partnerships Office in the DBSA. So Thomas has already told us, what some of the role of public development banks can be in the water sector and why it's important. He's described it not as a silver bullet per se, but it has certain advantages, and we've seen in the Netherlands and many other places how this has worked. But now we're going to hear specifically how it's worked in Vietnam and then later here in Southern Africa. So with that, over to you, Chung. Do you have the clicker? You do. Fantastic.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting to be the speaker to this session. I just got a book from Professor Thomas Mawar. It's very interesting here that PDBs is a very specific case study in his book, and he's have very deep research on what we are doing in Vietnam, especially why we are using the AFD money to finance for the water supply company in Vietnam. So I think for today, my presentation is just a little bit review what we have done, and like in his book, we have done many things in the water supply and especially in the water sector in Vietnam. But as Professor Thomas Mawar mentioned in the book, we can done more as a public bank. We done well, but we can have more contribution to the water sector. Because for the water sector, I don't know what is going on with the other countries, but in Vietnam, the case Vietnam is quite different. Because in the past, most of water supply company in Vietnam, they are the public company, and later on, 15 years ago, they are going through a process of what we call is equitizations. Actually, the word is privatizations. So all of the water supply company they became private company. So the situations changed very much. So the role of PDB as a public bank on the financing water supply service is also changed according to the change of the water sector in Vietnam. So let me start with just a very brief introduction of VDB and what we are doing in Vietnam. VDB is the financial organization of the government with 100% of capital owned by Vietnamese government. And we're focusing on the development targets of the government, including Vietnam Green Growth Strategy and Climate Change Strategy. We are the largest on-lending ODA agency in Vietnam. And most, one of our missions in Vietnam is to provide loans to water sector. And we use a lot of ODA resources for financing the water sector in Vietnam. And we have more than 30 main branches along the nations that help us to provide better service, better financial service to the water sector, especially to the customer who are located in the remote area. Here's our line of business. We provide various of the loan, but we focus mostly on the medium and long-term investment project, of which, as mentioned in the book of Professor Thomas Mawar, is our lending activity is very much suitable for water financing because we mostly provide medium and long-term. You know, the bankability of the water supply project is not high. So they always require the lower interest rate and the longer repayment terms. So for the VDB mandates, we are doing with project financing for the medium and long-term loan. So it's quite suitable for the water sector. So here's the overview of our water financing in Vietnam. So we have financed for more than 200 projects. And currently we have a loan outstanding of equivalent to 600 million USD. And we finance both private and public-owned company. And location is rural, urban, mountainous area. And with the various capacity of each projects. So you can see that VDBs play a very important role in Vietnam to provide a loan for water supply company. So thanks to supporting from AFD and water coalitions, we have been working with the consultants to see how the water coalition can support VDB for water supply service to improve our capacity. So we do the SWOT analysis, and we made several recommendations for the future financing service of VDB. Because the time is quite limited, so I don't want to go into very details here. Here's I want to show several cases that we are using the ODA resources to financing water supply company in Vietnam. We got the money from the World Bank. We got money from the AFD. But as you can see here, the methodology of these two types of program is quite different. Because when we got the loan from the World Bank, they wish to, to develop a kind of commercial market for water supply in Vietnam. They wanted the public bank to provide loans at the commercial rates. But for the case of AFD, AFD provide VDB loans with the lower interest rates. And we extend loans to a water supply company with the very low interest rates and longer repayment terms. So I think in Vietnamese market, the approach of the different donor is quite different. As I mentioned here, that World Bank, they wish to have a kind of commercial market. But for the case of AFD, AFD wants to have a more development elements in the water supply sector. And also we got funds from the Finland government. But this case is also different compared to AFD or World Bank, because in this program, we provide loan not only to the water supply, but also it covers sanitation. So I think that the role of public bank is not only to cover the commercial water supply, but also to cover the water supply for the rural area. And also, if possible, we can cover the sanitation. But the key elements here is that whether we can find the reason to finance those projects, and whether we can find the the suitable funding resources to finance. Because for water supply, the project can be bankable, but for the sanitation, sometimes it's not bankable, but we still need some subsidy from the government for this kind of project. That is the reason why the role of public bank is very important, because if we leave this for commercial banks, they cannot have a subsidy from the government, because especially in Vietnam, in the mountainous and rural area, we still need subsidy for lending to the water supply and sanitation project. So I think that is the end of my presentations, and I'm welcome any question. Thank you very much.
Our second speaker who finished ahead of time. Wonderful. So pressure for you, Johan. That's 2 out of 3. No, that's not how it works. So where are our Willy Wonka golden ticket holders? Got 1, 2, 3. Don't be shy. Somewhere over here, I know there's one. Look at maybe the chair next to you, if it's not on your chair. Okay, so remember, thinking of a question either for Vietnam or for Johan. I think what we've heard in Vietnam is very interesting, and I lived there for 1.5 years, is that the Public Development Bank, the Vietnam Development Bank, can partner with bilaterals or multilaterals in different ways to achieve different objectives, as we heard for sanitation, not looking for it to be repaid, for there to be grants, the AFD taking a softer approach to the interest rates, etc. So you can achieve different goals, but if you look at it from the point of view of those who are borrowing the money or receiving the grants, it's great to have one interlocutor that understands their context, speaks their language, and has different things that it can offer them, essentially. But Johan, you have 10 minutes. Please let us know how it's working out here in Southern Africa.
Thank you very much, David, and good morning, everybody. I always enjoy watching people's reactions when it comes to water and sanitation, or funding for water and sanitation, when I say that money isn't our problem. I think it's less relevant to the audience today because I think you understand that, but we know that water is such a social sector, and it's often one of the more difficult sectors to finance. Yet money is not always our problem. I'd like to share with you today a bit of our experience in South Africa and the ways in which we are looking at increasing our investment in the water sector. So I think our challenge is mainly, and we've heard this a number of times over the past couple of days, is that the lack of bankable projects. So money is not our problem. There's enough money around. Investors are really looking at investing in water infrastructure, but the bankable projects aren't there. So we really need to spend much more time and effort in project preparation, providing technical assistance to ensure that we can create bankable projects. And with that is credit enhancement mechanisms. We've heard a lot about that over the past couple of days, and that's really the main focus of our public banks and our DFIs and MDBs, is to provide credit enhancement mechanisms and instruments. In South Africa, the mandate and the responsibility for specifically water services lies with municipalities. But that's also where the challenge lies. Municipalities are often constrained in terms of skills and expertise and capacity, and especially funding to invest and create projects when it comes to water. But the need lies with municipalities and with the public sector. On the other hand, we've got the private sector. We've got skills, we've got expertise, we've got capacity, and we've got funding. But we don't have a mechanism to match these two. So that really led to the establishment of the Water Partnerships Office. It's a partnership between the Department of Water and Sanitation, the DBSA, and SALGA. SALGA is the South African Local Government Association, and they created the Water Partnerships Office. And the main role of the office is to create opportunities for private sector participation in water and sanitation services. So the role of the office is firstly to develop standardized programs. And the reasoning behind that is to say, can we create mechanisms, models, standard documentation to ensure that it becomes easier, quicker, more cost-effective for us to package and prepare projects, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Municipalities often work in silos. We aren't able to learn from previous experiences, but creating a standardized approach, we want to share that experience and make it available so that we can ensure that things happen quicker, easier, more cost-effective in creating a pipeline of bankable projects. We've got 6 standardized programs that we have adopted and are working on in the office, and I'll quickly run through them. The first one is non-revenue water. On average, municipalities in South Africa lose just under 50% of their water. So this program will focus on reducing physical losses, improving revenues, and ensuring that we reduce the non-revenue water. The mechanism for private sector participation that we're working on there is through performance-based contracts. The second program is a water reuse program, which will aim to increase and scale our reuse opportunities across the country, taking water from municipal wastewater treatment works, doing further treatment on that, also generate energy, beneficiate the sludge, and ensure that we can reuse that water, whether for potable, industrial, agricultural purposes. And the mechanism there is likely through PPP, project finance mechanisms. We've also very proud to have secured $235 million from the GCF, the Green Climate Fund, for this water reuse program, concessional and grant funding to go towards water reuse projects. The wastewater treatment program will focus on upgrading, refurbishing and rehabilitating our wastewater treatment works. We don't always have a reuse opportunity. In some cases, we just need to treat the water to the right standards before we discharge, and that program will focus on that aspect. The non-sewage sanitation program is designed to scale non-sewage sanitation or water-efficient sanitation systems across the country, specifically in our informal settlements, schools, for example. There's a lot of new developments happening internationally around improved levels of service, and we've partnered there with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to see how we can scale the rollout of non-sewage sanitation options across the country. Our seawater desalination program is designed to procure large volumes of desalinated seawater from the private sector, especially obviously for our coastal cities. And we're in the process of designing that, looking at independent water producer and PPP models to ensure that we can procure from the private sector. And then the last program is not a directly investment-related program, but management contract program, where we will bring private sector capacity in to support municipalities with the operations, the maintenance of their water systems, and the water business within municipalities. So within each one of these programs, we then look at preparing projects, so providing assistance to municipalities to prepare projects within these standardized mechanisms and models and documentation and approaches. We will then assist with the preparation and structuring of projects. I think we've got some access to project preparation funding. It's never enough. I don't think you will ever have enough funding for project preparation. So we are also looking at partnering with various stakeholders and preparation providers to assist us in doing the structuring and the packaging of these projects. And then we've also identified the need for credit enhancement systems, and especially for guarantees. In South Africa, the national government is not providing any guarantees to local government, to municipalities. So we have to look at alternative mechanisms, and for our 2 priority programs, the non-revenue water program and the water reuse program, we are looking at putting program guarantees in place for those projects, so that projects that do require that to enhance or increase the bankability, ensure the bankability of projects, that we can access those guarantee instruments to give comfort to the private sector if the credit risk in the municipalities are too high. And then I'd lastly just like to share some experiences on the infrastructure fund. I don't know, many of you might know that the South African government has established an infrastructure fund. It's also housed within the DBSA. And the main focus of the infrastructure fund is to leverage government funding for blended finance solutions. I think in the past we've often looked at when it comes to financing for water or for infrastructure for that matter, we look at government to fund those projects, but we aren't always able, weren't always able to leverage private sector investment. So the idea is to say, what is the minimum amount of funding that needs to come in from government, gap funding, and how can we leverage and how can we gear private sector investment. So that's really the focus of the infrastructure fund, is to ensure and create blended finance opportunities. The infrastructure fund has been very successful up to now. They've secured about 23 billion rand from national government for 7 large water infrastructure projects. It's mostly water resources projects. Total project value of about just over 50 billion rand, and the balance of that comes from the private sector, but also from DFIs and MDBs that can participate in credit enhancement and subordinated infrastructures or subordinated tranches within the capital stack. So that's just a couple of examples of what we are doing in South Africa. We hope to, over time, build a stronger and stronger pipeline of projects within those different program areas that I mentioned, and really want to create a new asset class around a number of these infrastructure or water sector aspects, so that we can really leverage the funding that comes from the private sector and reduce the reliance and the burden on government to provide that service. But also not only the funding, but also bring private sector capacity and expertise in to assist municipalities with the implementation, and then importantly the operation and maintenance, to ensure a sustainable and a long-term service delivery. Thanks, David.
Great, thank you very much, Jan. Round of applause to you. Another speaker who's kept to time, so this ambition of getting to questions is good. So for those of you with the Willy Wonka ticket, I hope you've got your question pretty much ready. Before we get to there, has anyone in the room ever been a consultant? Some of you. Well, it's fantastic as a consultant. Sometimes you write a report and you think nobody's ever going to read it. And in 2013, I helped write one about performance-based contracts for non-revenue water in South Africa. I literally thought, wait, for 8 years, nothing has happened with that report or anything. But now I find out it's all ended up at the DBSA, and money is actually going to go out the door for that. So that's gratifying to hear. But I think the point that I wanted to make is that what is interesting about how different public development banks can do different things in different places. And we've already heard in Vietnam, the tone is quite different than the tone here, where we're looking to encourage that private sector participation, but also have it done through a standardized program, but also be able to, through having DBSA and the role of the fund, support project preparation funding. And that's often a complaint that we hear in the water sector, is that the projects, when you compare them to energy or other projects, tend to be a little bit smaller. They're a little bit more diverse sometimes, and therefore getting and making available that support to get that funded is one of those valuable roles that PDBs can play, and I think that's in Thomas's book, and again at the waterfinancecoalition.org website you'll find more about this. We're going to put that up later on in the session. I think the other thing that you see across both Vietnam and the DBSA is the fact that you are the implementing agent for the GCF in both cases, right? And in the water sector, we're often lamenting, why is it when water and climate are so inextricably linked that we're not getting more climate funding into the sector? But the fact that those are the implementing agents, I think, presents a massive opportunity for the water sector to correct that and to see that funding flow down to municipalities and others. So that's given the Willy Wonka golden ticket holders enough time to ask their questions. So who wants to go first? I'll stand up. In case you're wondering what this is, over there we have these red things. We've got one here. You're ready, sir. Anyone else want to go next? We've got one there, and then one there. So we'll start here. You can use your microphone there. First here, then there. We'll hear 2 questions, then we'll put them up, and then we'll hopefully have time for another 2 that we can put up.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mukundi from the University of Cape Town. I just have a question here. mainly directed on the academic side from the professor, and also I think the Vietnam and the DBSA. Due to water supply infrastructure needing large amounts of capital, especially to introduce water supply infrastructure into some of these rural areas, what then happens downstream to the citizens who actually use this water supply infrastructure? And now one of the main sources of funding outside of national and municipal level tax revenue and donations, and also, essentially also the infrastructure that has a design life, but also the municipal services need to be run in perpetuity, as you can't just cut water supply after 15-year agreements. For example, from some of the Vietnam projects that I saw that do get loan agreements for 15 years, I foresee that the local authorities might end up actually focusing on paying back loan agreements and interest, and will forego funding the necessary water supply infrastructure for maintenance and refurbishment and future upgrading in order to keep their credit rating for access to funding or financing. Yet I feel this will drastically affect the useful life and the infrastructure that was financed through these PDBs. So how can PDBs and institutions alike that provide or ensure, number one, citizens have not only clean water and sanitation, but that is also affordable in the long run? And number two, how can we manage and fund the water supply infrastructure effectively and efficiently using PDBs and institutions alike? Thank you.
Thank you. That's two very clear questions at the end there, one about affordability and one about how the PDBs can assist with that. Let's hear our second question and decide who might want to take the first one amongst you. Okay.
Thank you. Infrastructure for water harvesting, transfer, and distribution is heavy. Requires huge chunks of land, a lot of resources from communities. And so my question is, as we're discussing approaches to increase investment in water, how much of this investment is directed towards community engagement, participation, and remediation systems to address harm that occurs when this type of projects are happening?
Thank you. And a very clear second question again, with that community angle. So who wants to take which one? Thomas, you'll take one first, and then we'll see where we end up.
Good morning, everyone, again, and thank you very much for the excellent question. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but I did catch you're from University of Cape Town, so thank you for that. And I know that the question of water struggles are really important to South Africa. I'm not an expert on South Africa, I won't speak to South Africa, but I do want to say that our position and where the research points us is, I just have to be really forthright about this, that, premising the delivery of SDG 6, water for all, unbankability, will not deliver SDG 6. And it does not and has not delivered SDG 6 anywhere in the world. That water simply needs more public provisioning, public spending, if you want to deliver it for all. We can, look at it in terms of bankable projects, but the sacrifice there is that you're either going to be using public money to subsidize private profits to deliver water for some, or use public money to deliver public water for all and deliver universality. And that will have to be paid for by collective approach. There are other areas where we can talk about that in different ways, but in water, there is simply no evidence around the world that is delivering SDG 6, water and sanitation for all. And that's full stop, period. So in that sense, if you're really thinking about universality of water delivery and just water delivery, public banks have a really important role, and I think we see some, what Vietnam is doing. There has to be subsidizations, there has to be really important collaborations, with multilateral lenders. AFD is doing some really interesting work. But there's an entire world of remunicipalization out there, of failed projects of privatization or PPPs everywhere from Canada, where I'm from, to the Eau de Paris in France, where the public delivery is cheaper, better, faster, cleaner, and more universal. And so I just really want to be clear on that. And there is, it has to be paid for and then subsidized. Water is not like, you know, delivering so many other, you know, services. And you know, I'm sorry to be so, you know, blunt about that. But I couldn't sit here and really say that the research simply does not support bankability in public water. If you want universality, something is sacrificed. So I think, you know, in terms of your question, then there simply has to be that role in terms of citizens, a focus on universality and universal access for all. The rate at which people pay for that, then you have to figure out what is the proper rate in terms of delivering water, but not delivering, you know, a profitability scale. And that's where the trade-off is. You can't get both.
Thank you, Thomas. Do either of you want to take up that balance that clearly does exist in water? Yeah, Johan? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, if you look at you know, investment, we said water is of a social nature, and often people think water should be free. Water is free. What we're paying for is the treatment and the transfer of that, and people don't always understand that. But there has to be a revenue stream that will repay an investment. So one will have to look at how do you structure these, there are different models for different applications. A true project finance project will not work in a rural setting, in a rural setting in South Africa or in any country for that matter. So there are different sources. You're looking at grants, you're looking at funding coming in from government to often subsidize that, and one needs to look at that package of that project and see what the affordability looks like and how do you structure. There isn't one solution that fits all, but one will have to look at the different applications of that. And I think there for me the community participation also comes in very strongly. You have to design a solution that the community will accept and that they can be part of. And in some cases one can look at community providing services themselves in a certain manner, or providing the operation and maintenance of that. So I think it's important to look at the different project specifics and to design a solution around that for the tariffs, for payment for services, for community participation, to looking at creating the sustainable solutions.
Time is short, and I'll stand up. Oh no, the camera follows you. It's amazing, the technology, what it can do these days. Hélène is going to give us a few closing words. We are going to finish on time because the organisers have encouraged me to remind you that there will be a session taking place in plenary, which we can start to move to at 9 when we've finished here. Please don't disappear because we will have a photo. But who else had a burning question? There you go, 1, 2, 3, 4. I encourage you at the end of the photos to come and ask your questions directly and skip the plenary. I'm not sure I'm allowed to do that, I'll probably get in trouble later. But by all means come up after we've taken a photo and ask those questions directly. So with that, I want to just again draw attention to this waterfinancecoalition.org. You could just Google Water Finance Coalition and it will take you there. But with no further ado, Hélène, a few closing words from you, and then we're done. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy that a lot of questions are raised. Just to say that we just had to start, and I think we had an interesting discussion, especially on the public-private and how to trigger and to have leviers to attract the private sector. What I want to say is also the importance of research. It has been said, because here I didn't speak about AFD activity, but we are considering the water sector as a systemic approach. What is really important, and if we are talking to access and to, at the end of the day, who are the beneficiaries, and if you want really to promote universality, we need to assure that water will be available. And we are talking about energy transition. Vietnam is engaged in JETP, South Africa is engaged in JETP, and we do know that water is at the heart of a conflict of usage between energy, between food, and all this. So it's really important also to develop a piece of research and digging into the long-term trajectories and to have really a comprehensive approach. And it's where the public sector is really important in terms of not only planification, but anticipation and design of what should be the water usage. So I'm happy that together with Vietnamese, the South African authorities, we are deeply involved in that. We hope that we will be able to pursue this approach elsewhere, and water should be really at the center of the JET and hold the long-term trajectory discussion. I think it's still lagging behind, but I hope that within this coalition, with your advocacy, with your sharing of experience and the community of practice, it would be able to be at an higher agenda. So thank you very much, and I'm very confident and that you have a very inspiring, and together we have a very inspiring and committed arena. Thank you.
Wonderful. Round of applause for the questions, for the presenters, for opening and closing. So we've finished on time. I'm hoping the moderator that has to deal with President Ramaphosa later manages to do such an efficient job, which will remind me I best get my tie back before Thomas takes a fancy to it. The books are over there. I said I would reserve one for a friend of mine, so don't give them all away. Just keep one. If the presenters can come up for a photo, please. If those of you who still want to ask a question can ask those as soon as we've done our photo. And again, I encourage everyone that there is a session starting now in the plenary. But from my side, thank you for all being here. And let's keep advancing the case of water. Thank you.